spoke with a man who is making those serious allegations.
Well, I think it started probably in 1967, 1968, that I was sexually molested by our father, Joseph Friel.
This is 41-year-old Chris Friel, a West Seneca native who says that while growing up as a student at 14 Holy Helpers School and while as an altar boy at 14 Holy Helpers Church, he was sexually abused by a Roman Catholic priest. This is a 1968 photo of Father Joseph P. Friel. Monsignor Martin Ebner is sitting to the right. Ebner was the pastor at 14 Holy Helpers at the time of the alleged abuse. Chris says the abuse began with subtle touches while he was at school, such as Father Friel putting his hand in Chris's pockets.
I probably started, like in a hallway, and it might have been with other children at the time. But the incidents that I actually remember the most happened when I was alone at the rectory.
Friel says he won't go into graphic detail about the nature of the attacks on television, but he says this was definitely a sexual abuse with sexual contact between him and Father Friel. He says the abuse occurred periodically for about a year, and unlike many victims, Chris did come forward to tell his story.
I think it came to light when I was attending religious instructions and I refused to go. I told my parents about it, and we went and confronted the Monsignor at 14 Holy Helpers and told him about what was going on. He basically didn't believe me. He said I was committing a mortal sin, and I probably could be excommunicated from the church, and how serious the allegations were. But I think they kind of took me seriously enough because the priest was transferred within a week or 2 weeks later.
Father Friel was transferred numerous times after that. Records going back to 1960 indicate he was an assistant at St. Aloysius Church in Buffalo until 1964. He worked at Our Lady of Victory Basilica in 1965 and 66, and then at 14 Holy Helpers from 67 to 70. Then between 1971 and 79, he had assignments at St. John the Evangelist, Blessed Sacrament of Kenmore, St. Bernard's, St. Bartholomew's, and St. Patrick's in the town of Randolph. He also served at the St. Vincent de Paul Parish in North Evans.
Hi, this is Father Joseph Friel. Father Steve Boyd calling from Channel 7. How are you today?
We contacted Father Friel by phone to ask about Chris's allegations.
The reason I'm calling is we've been in touch with a gentleman who was at your parish when you were at 14 Holy Helpers. And he's told us that he was sexually abused by you back in the late 1960s. And I wanted to know if I could get a comment from you.
Oh, no, that certainly didn't take place. I don't know who the gentleman is, but that's not true.
His name is Chris Friel, and he's pretty adamant that that's what happened.
No.
Reverend Friel is retired from the ministry. In fairness to him, we asked for an on-camera interview.
Oh, I don't think so.
We'd really like to get your side of the story.
I don't think there's any story to have a side of.
But Chris Friel is convinced there is.
The seriousness of these allegations, I think a lot of people are probably going to be surprised, and some people are probably going to be appalled. But I hope that Father Friel knows the seriousness of the trauma that he's caused people like myself and probably other people are out there. I hope that they can come forth and find the strength and the courage to do what I'm doing.
Chris has been in counseling for several months now, trying to come to terms with his alleged abuse. He says the sign on the front of his former parish helped him come forward and tell a story that he says he tried to tell more than 25 years ago. Now, aside from Father Friel's denial of these allegations, I also spoke to Diocesan Attorney Terrence Connors today. Mr. Connors tells me the allegations fall outside the legal statute of limitations, that there have never been any similar allegations made against Father Friel, and that he says the case depends upon conversation with a priest, Monsignor Ebner, who has been dead for 22 years. He also says there are numerous factual and legal misstatements in the complaint. Now, in the complaint itself, Attorney Jennifer Coleman argues that the statute of limitations should not be adhered to because Chris Friel and his father reported this case to their pastor back in the late 1960s. And the statute of limitations is going to be a key in this case because the diocese certainly will argue that the statute ran out when he was in his early 20s, and the people, Chris Friel and his attorney, will argue we went to the diocese long before the statute ran out. It's going to be up to a judge to decide whether or not the statute will be asserted here as a defense. If it is not, it will go to trial. If they allow the statute in,
it will never go to trial.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. We'll hear more on that.